So did you form friendships or kind of like hero worship of any of these people that you worked with?
No, there might have been some sort of friendships, but way later on. And they were, I would say, to be honest, more in the nature of father figures, because my parents split up before I started making movies, and there was no father in my family. And so naturally the directors would fall into that slot and play the role of the father figure, or some of the lead actors sometimes. But I didn't form very many friendships. I was very withdrawn as a child. I mean, I have children myself. Now, at this point in time that I'm talking to you, I have a 9-year-old and an 11-year-old. And they are enjoying a childhood. And they play, and they go to school, they learn, and they play. And they have this fantastic world that's unfolding before them. And it seems right that that's what they should be doing. And I would think that if I had some reason to, or the ability to put them to work, I would drastically change their experience, and I don't think for the better. If they had to work 8, 10, 12 hours a day, move their schooling down to 3 hours a day, and fragment it, and had to work in a very high-pressure situation, psychologically and emotionally high-pressure situation, with adults who on subconscious levels are competing with one another in various ways, I think their childhood would go out the window. And mine went out the window. I didn't have the free play. So that's what made me, I was withdrawn. I mean, I was going, what the hell is, I wanted out of it.
Was there pressure on you to deliver?
Well, MGM was a big studio, and you could feel that they certainly wanted the performances to deliver, as you say. Everyone on the set, I mean, when it came time to rehearse and then roll the camera, there's dead silence. They go like this, and it's bang all on you. If you don't think they want you to deliver, I don't know what you think. You couldn't go, I'm sorry, I don't want to do it. Yes, it was intense pressure.
Did you enjoy any part of it?
Sporadically, I think one of the countless beautiful, wondrous facets of a child is that they are able to find ways to enjoy themselves. And I was no exception. It was just a little more difficult for me because it's the situation. Someone else who's been through it would, understand. Roddy McDowell and Jackie Conan, Elizabeth, all these people that had the experience would know what I'm talking about. Sure, there are times when you enjoy yourself and you have fun.
What about friendships with other kids on the lot? Were you able to form any?
I didn't form any. No.
Was there a competition? Maybe not on your part, but on some of the other kids?
No. Well, for one, there were very, very few children there in the under contract and going to school in the schoolhouse at MGM. There were no more than 10, and some of those were in the other room. They were in more advanced grades. Elizabeth was in there, and Shirley Johns was another girl. They were sort of buddies because they were budding teenagers at the time. And I can't remember all the kids that were in the younger grades. Claude Jarman was there for a while. Margaret was there for a while. And several others that would come, and next thing you knew, they weren't there anymore.
Because they were kidnapped. No.
Entirely different movie.
Oh, maybe
All
they
right,
looked from
welcome
somebody else's
to
body.
Movie Night Extravaganza. Of course, that was Dean Stockwell, who just passed away at the age of 85 after a 7-decade-long movie career, spanning, I think on IMDb, I was looking last night, 240 credits, which is, insane, I think. Especially like that level of longevity, that level of like good roles, even as because he wasn't exactly young in like the 80s and 90s when he really started to have that comeback, doing The Player, doing Dune, doing all these different David Lynch movies, Blue Velvet, like all of that kind of in that same period. So that longevity is really amazing.
Agreed. Awesome.
But like,
Yeah.
I don't know if you want me to start on the note that like of today's movie, I feel like we could have probably like discussed a different movie. We were going to talk about Blue Velvet, but then like we switched to Paris, Texas. But like I feel like there's a kind of bittersweet note that I have to begin by saying that like while I like really enjoyed every moment that this dude was on the screen. I did feel like this was a movie in which, speaking of the child, I feel like the child in this movie, like, kind of, like, ate him up a little bit with the performance. Because, like, the child was so compelling. And, like, I think the scenes in which the child was, like, basically leading the scene itself, like, with the other character was kind of, like, pretty telling in a way that I think he's describing how children are in that they find a way to make everything joyful and despite whatever the circumstances. And that's kind of pretty fascinating that you began this discussion with that clip.
Yeah. Well, of course, the movie that we watched this week to introduce it is Paris, Texas, which is a 1984 kind of outlaw Western, not outlaw, but like Western styled like family drama / kind of mystery on the level of like learning about the guy as kind of time goes on, like not
almost
mystery
like noir in a way.
yeah,
but like
it's
very Wim Wenders, very Wim Wenders. Like he has a
like
thing,
a psychological,
yeah.
like a psychological noir, because I feel like in noir movies a lot of times the pressure is coming from the outside and it's like somebody chasing him, and in this he's trying to figure out kind of his own who he is after that fugue state, I think. Or I don't know what you guys think about the fugue state. He starts off the movie and he seems not to be able to remember anything. Is that just alcoholism kind of soaking his brain, and then or do you think it's just wandering through the desert, or do you think he's kind of in a way faking it and like trying to just get away?
I can tell you I've been through some breakups where I've just wanted to like go and walk to the ends of the earth like that.
Wander to the desert.
But this was way more than like a breakup.
Yeah, and I mean he did it for 4 years, which is impressive. But like I mean like I can appreciate that emotion. But it took us a while to figure out where what happened. But
I should probably introduce the panel, by the way.
Yeah, that's a thought.
All right,
you really need to introduce us?
It's your show, brother.
Definitely introduce Marina Dove, who is a YouTuber, Twitch streamer, artist, many other things. If you want to plug anything, start out with.
I'm Marina Dove. I make like literary analyses and like class analyses on YouTube. Sometimes I stream on Twitch when I'm playing video games, and you can find me on Twitter being like a world-class shit poster. So.
All right, and going this way, Karthik. I think everybody knows Karthik at this point. He's like, pretty much one of the 3 rotating co-hosts. I think Conan is the other one, and Andy obviously on pretty much all of them. But Karthik is has Revolutionary Tracks, which Conan's about to be on, right, on Friday.
Yeah, we're gonna have Conan on.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, so it's always a pleasure to be here, and like it's kind of funny that like you said rotating co-host, but all 3 of us are here basically at this point. I think. I wonder if there's anybody else also.
But there was a point.
Rotation's broken right now, apparently. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, there was a point where you guys hadn't been on the same panel for a little bit, wasn't there? And also, Kenzo's been on a million of these shows, and I feel like Conan was never on a panel with Kenzo until a couple of weeks ago or something.
Yeah.
So it's like,
yeah, it's weird. It's it's almost just like luck of the draw, really. Sort of like we totally did. It's so I would equate it to like when you play in bands, like, oh yeah, remember we played, when we played such and such. I was like, oh no, we didn't play that show. I'm like, oh really? And like it just feels like someone was there. You're like, oh, it feels like you were there. Feels like you played that show. I was like, okay. Anyway,
I mean, especially those early giant panel episodes.
Yeah, it's like there's 17 freaking people on the panel. You're
You're
one of
still
them, right?
doing the Dune one right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it almost was. If Anna was on, it would have been one, I think, because like a lot of people were like, "Oh, Anna's coming on. Let me cash in this favor and and come on the panel."
Yeah, everyone wants to know you suddenly. Anyway, I'm walking over Karthik's intro, so continue. What I do?
No, I thought the intro was done. No, I mean, like, is there anything more?
I mean, anything more you want to plug?
Oh yeah, I mean, we're just like basically trying to talk to musicians who are, I guess, like the kind of working rule is that we're no longer going to just be, operating from the point of view of critique of the mainstream, but like actually give like voice and like talk to artists who are actually doing the work in the community, and like also really taking seriously the project of like making music for the people and so on. So we have Conan next, and like we have a couple of other artists, like including someone who's a collaborator of Napoleon's Legend. So
yeah, I was going to say
excited.
Napoleon the Legend is the first person that comes to mind when it. I mean, I know he's been on your show a bunch of times, but like he's the first person that comes to mind when it comes to like doing the work and actually like building stuff on the ground. I saw that clip of him. Somebody posted a clip of him on Sway in the Morning today, and I was watching him. I was watching him freestyle on Sway in the Morning, which is a mind fuck because I like, I actually like have had conversations with him. So it's like next to Sway.
I don't know if like we want to aspire to the same levels of celebrity that like pop culture like attributes to any artist, really, like whether it be a filmmaker or a movie star or a musician. But like I feel like it still is a very empowering feeling when you see like Napoleon do that, or like when an artist is actually doing something that's at once both radical and like to an extent like cool. I think that's basically the mix that we're trying to showcase in the series. And
I mean, I don't think I think the critical role is probably not to overshadow artists, but the artistic role, I think, like whether you're a leftist or genuinely radical or not, I think you can be in all of these spaces and like really and be highly successful. Just like probably don't like hit the Jay-Z and become a fucking billionaire and
hit the Jay-Z button. Oh, I'm Jay-Z now. I hit the button. Damn it.
Oh, fuck.
What's happened?
I can't find the Jay-Z
Not
button
again.
All right, we have Conan Neutron, the host of Protonic Reversal, and of course, frontman for Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends. How's it going?
Fantastic. Great to be here. I love this movie, and I love Blue Velvet as well, but I'm glad to be talking about it because I actually just rewatched it recently, and I was really just struck by how beautiful and interesting and unique it is. And I think I'm looking forward to talking about it. I think if they made it today, well, first of all, good luck making it today, but it'd be like a prestige television series because it kind of has like so many movements to it, right? Like, it's like you have like the whole like beginning, you're like, who's this guy? What's his deal? What's happening? And then there's like, okay, he finds a family, so on. And then there's just the whole, no spoilers or anything, but there's the whole like going back to Texas with the kid and so on. And like it covers so many things, but that's totally a Wim Wenders thing. Like if any of you guys have seen Until the End of the World, it's like that, like times 20, where you're like, oh my God, is this like, like The Sims or something? Like what post-apocalyptic The Sims? Like
there seemed to be some interesting tension like off screen between him and Harry Dean Stanton.
Yeah. Well, Harry Dean Stanton is both known as one of the like coolest, sweetest dudes in the world, and also like a very opinionated guy who knows exactly what he wants. Yeah, and again, RIP to another legend, because I don't think I've ever seen him and there was nothing I've ever seen him in where he didn't make it better.
Yeah,
I mean, in some cases, like Pretty in Pink, it wasn't that hard to make it better.
Absolutely. But anyway, I'm super happy to be here talking to y'all about Paris, Texas. I think it's a really great movie, and I'm excited to So just mix it up, get in the ring.
All right, and of course, I didn't introduce Andy yet. J. Andrew World, illustrator, co-host, good friend.
Working guy. Oh man, I've been doing nothing but drawing and watching movies, and it's kind of ridiculous at this point.
What a hard life!
Terrible.
What a hard life you must lead.
Yeah, I know it's terrible.
You?
No, but you'll be happy to know I've seen 3 movies today and gotten quite a bit of artwork done.
Literally, you draw every sketch on left YouTube, I feel like.
No, but I've gotten around. I'm working my way through left YouTube.
Yeah, not
There's
yet.
gonna start being like rip off J. Andrew World things, and it's gonna be like K. Andrew World or like L. Andrew World. Like they're gonna just
like the GoBots version.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to like start creating like a lefty what are those things? Non-fungible coin things.
Dollar
like
store J. Andrew
one.
World.
Who wants a movie night extravaganza NFT?
Yes.
J. Andy Globe. Yeah.
Non-fuckable token, is that right?
I read that whole meme in the Chris Meltisanti voice too, and I was like really pissed at that because I just was like, wow. Did you see that? Did you see the thing recently? Elijah Wood, I guess, bought this this zombie NFT, and he was like bragging about it. And it turns out the guy is like a far right fascist guy that's drawn like a bunch of these like really racist cartoons in the past. He didn't know that, I don't think, but it was really funny to imagine Elijah Wood doing like the because it's not Frodo, obviously it does it as Bilbo, but like it was golden, so it's like he was holding it like fucking ring, and he's just like, after all, why not? Why shouldn't I keep it? Because everyone's like, get rid of it.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean,
that's a reference no one's gonna get in 2 weeks, but I got it. We're good. They're like, who? What? When did that happen?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I raced. I thought it was gonna pop off, so I raced to make a picture of Frodo holding the NFT, and I made one within 30 seconds of seeing it, and then like I think Nia retweeted it, no one else did, and I was like,
I didn't get what the joke was referring to, so I didn't retweet it.
Oh.
Yeah.
I think all of this looks extremely unfunny and ridiculous when we're looking at it from the real world, right? But once we're in the metaverse, this is gonna be like the treasure that everybody is gonna seek, and everybody's life is gonna become about that, and you'd be wondering, are we living in a simulation all the time? And that's basically where we're headed, I think.
I feel like a lot of people already are wondering that all all which is the funny
I mean,
part.
that's kind of that was kind of the point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a repeat of the same thing. It's like how we wonder if we are living in a virtual reality that has no meaning or tethered to reality. I mean, speaking of, right, which is, I think, the point of the fugue itself. How does this dude end up in this state of complete alienation, and he has no memory or recollection of what happened to him, and he's piecing his life together after that, and we're watching the movie unfold as he pieces his life together, which is basically, I think, what we do with our fragmented selves online these days. But I don't know if Wim Wenders was basically being offering a premonition of social media through Paris, Texas. But I don't know. I mean, that's obviously too much of a reach, but you get the point that we're kind of living Harry Dean Stanton's life, all of us.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's some merit to that, and I think it's interesting that the viewer has to sort of draw their own conclusions for a really long time about what led this guy to be in this place, what is his deal, what's happening, and then it's
and then
even
at the end you're like, oh, smoke inhalation.
Exactly. Yeah. But I think it's again, it's a noirish style of storytelling, but it's not really noir. It's just sort of, I mean, it's very Wim Wenders. It's like that guy's wildly Teutonic in his way,
Although I think, to bring back the noir comparison, the colors used, the way the colors are used in some of the scenes is very noir, which is odd because noir's known for black and white, but like you know, noir's known for high contrast. You know, black.
I have towards the end. I have the color slides. I have like 19 of them that I grabbed.
Yeah,
Like...
and I think one of the strengths of the movie is kind of playing with the noirish concept of contrast, but using colors. And I
right, really washed
I've
out,
only gotten
like
through the
that.
movie once, so I can't quite speak on like, you know, any deeper meaning of like why they used the colors when they did. I
mean, the entire movie is in like
Wait,
red,
Karthik,
white, and blue.
I want to bring Marina into this because everyone else,
Oh.
everyone else had long point statements so far.
Oh, I mean, I might not have like as deep of an analysis. I was just like very taken aback by like how much you were allowed to hate your kids in the 80s and get away with it. That was
yeah, you give them a key, they get to go home.
like just completely like blown away by that. But yeah, I remember like when I was watching it, there's the scene where he steps into the first motel room that they're in when his brother picks them up, and just remember looking at like the red coloring in the bed, and you know, it just feels like there's always this attempt to capture just kind of how like ugly everything was in the 80s, like how the polyester, the tacky patterns, the clashing, everything's just, but you know, I definitely did notice like the stark like contrast in colors, and was definitely like keenly aware to like this tie to the color red, just kept popping up like throughout.
The green.
Yeah.
Lots of green too.
All right, I'll throw up the I mean,
all right, I'll play the clip.
No, it's not the clip. So it's no, I have a
gif of script being thrown in the air and pages flying down.
No, I have a folder of like shots that I took.
Oh, cool.
That I grabbed that I liked, and so I have like there's like 19 of them, which I went overboard with it, but
yeah. I know. Yeah, I was noticing there was a lot of red, including the very, very, very last shot where with the driving. Since everybody's quiet, I figured I'd jump in. But again, since I've only just seen this movie for the first time, I don't have because directors use color like something very personal to them. And it's not like a universal thing. Typically, because you know they're not thinking like, you know, what does this color, you know, express or whatever. They're thinking about like what does, you know, they're thinking very cinematically about these things. So like I imagine like the green for that last shot came from the fact that you know, those street lights are very low quality lights. If you ever take pictures with them, they do turn you know, towards the green because it's you know, low quality light.
So you're talking about the parking lot, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they thought, I mean, they thought really deeply.
There we go.
They thought really deeply, I think, about the color in it and the lighting, because I was listening to the DVD commentary. I didn't listen to all of it. I didn't go through the whole 2.5 hours of DVD commentary, but I listened to like a good amount of it today, at least the second half of it. And but the first half of it, they were talking about the diner scene that was lit kind of green, and they didn't have a correct light going at the angle that they needed to, so they brought in their own. So that's kind of what tinted it green, was they brought their own lighting in to kind of do that. But I'm kind of, I mean, it seems to go along with the actual. I watched it like 1.5 times. I didn't watch so I kind of am on your level, Andy. But the times that, like, in the beginning and the end, it's bathed in green. This level of green in both cases, and then, you know, as he gets closer and closer, like out of the wilderness, the green starts to fade, and it gets less and less green, and it's like this, and then the blues start coming, and the red, and you know what I mean. So like those colors start to be more apparent, but like with like the beginning and the end, he's bathed in this like that dark green both times.
The time when he kind of basically takes the kid away, I mean, like we're going to get to that but like the entire trip, the colors that they wear is like basically red, white, and blue. And the kid even has like a NASA shirt, and like he wears a full red shirt. And I always wondered if, you know, Wim Wenders is a guy who made movies, a documentary about Cuban music before, like, you know, in the 80s and stuff like that. So and noteworthy also, you know, worth noting here is Ry Cooder is the musician who scores this movie. And like I was like pretty taken aback to even, you know, discover that. And it's kind of interesting how the red could, I don't know if it signified like we're all basically, you know, socialists. So what do you think the red actually had to do with a sort of revolutionary spirit, or like some kind of radical thought that he's supposed to embody, because he does like wear red at some pretty significant points in the story?
I mean,
like, is this an awakening that he's like coming back from? Is the fugue also supposed to be some sort of like awakening that he's had?
I thought I had the one where they were matching, but I guess I didn't grab that one. But this is a good example of his. This is the red shirt that he's wearing when he leaves with his son. I don't necessarily think it's that. I think that I definitely
also wears the red hat when he comes out of the desert, and
yeah.
and it's like the Catcher in the Rye hat. I remember like that's something that is supposed to be like and I don't know if we also have to remember that the writer of this movie is Sam Shepard, who is like far more I would say a bigger heavyweight than even probably Wim Wenders at the time. I don't know. As a writer, he could have been a more significant, prolific author and so on, with his own like style and whatnot. So I wonder how much of this is like supposed to signify some kind of, you know, J.D. Salinger kind of Holden Caulfield kind of, you know, rebellious or like.
Well, I think
runaway.
you know, the West in itself kind of has this the wilderness feel to it, right? Like wandering through the desert, almost like biblical. You know what I mean? Like wandering away from this great flame, like as you imagine at the end of it, like wandering through the desert for whatever amount of time into the wilderness. Like they keep using that phrase. The you know, the Dean Stockwell keeps using the phrase like you're not in the wilderness anymore. You know what I mean? You're back with your family. You're back around people. You're not in the wilderness. And I think the wilderness part of it, it kind of plays a big role in why these colors are so heightened, right? Like green is like, you know, well, it's both like the woods and stuff, but it's also like, you know, camouflage and a predator, like the color that predators can see the most shades of. Like, I think that these bright colors signify that he's going farther and farther into this wilderness. And then, you know, the colors get more muted when he's at the house. Like the colors are extremely muted at the house with Dean Stockwell and his kind of very kissy French wife. I thought she was gonna like. First, I thought, all right, so the kid kind of looked like her a little bit. Like the kid kind of had a similar, because the kid was blonde, and obviously looks very different from that. So I thought first you were gonna find out that secretly she was the mom. That was my first guess. Like she was the actual mother or something of the kid, and they had like hidden. Like I felt like there's gonna be something there, or that she was gonna sleep with him or something. Like, but then that's. I mean, I'm glad they didn't go in that direction and just
that would have
like
made it much more mundane to me.
Yeah,
it would have been like much more expected and kind of like pedestrian almost. And there's many things you can say about Paris, Texas, but pedestrian is not one of them.
Yeah, she's almost MacGuffin in a way. Like she's there to kind of misdirect, but also drive the plot forward with the fact that she's able to tell him where you know his where his wife was at one point. So you know MacGuffin's not quite the right term, but like she is a bit of a misdirect. Like what's her actual goal there? Like what's her reason for being? You know,
I think they're kind of like mirror images, right? Almost like there's a mirror image going on with she's supposed to be the angel in the house who wants to be the mom, and that's the mirror image of Natasha Kinski. That's her name, right? Like the phone line operator.
The iconic scenes in film, that one.
Rocco from Rocco's Modern Light.
Right. And like there's a mirror image likewise going on.
There you go. That's the stuff. That's a killer producer right there running this show.
Yeah. And
that's my favorite mirror image because it's so fucking weird. Why like his face is just inside of her head.
Yeah.
That's not something that was changed. That's something I grabbed right from the movie.
That's why he ran away. That's what he saw, and he ran away from it. That's he's afraid of that, basically.
I married myself.
I mean, I'm only half joking. I don't know. I mean, like, I feel like he kind of saw himself. That's a very interesting relationship, which I think probably deserves its own discussion. But I was mainly pointing out the fact that there's a kind of parallel between the huge distinction between him and his brother, and which is Dean Stockwell's character, and
R.I.P.
and
everybody.
and the kind of two European blonde women who seem to be the kind of counterweights to each of their characters, which I think is kind of worth talking about, where you have like somebody, both of whom are kind of bringing in a cosmopolitan element into the Wild West landscape story,
as Europeans frequently do, I guess.
Yeah. and I feel like that's the kind of question it seems to be asking. Like, is that what basically there's a point where I forget which character, but like basically there's a dissatisfaction with are we just going to live in the suburbs now? Is this what life is going to be? And I think like there's the sort of tension between someone who just like wants to run away into the desert and like kind of still be scrounging at the edges of what they think can happen in like expansion and whatnot, like expanding their reach and whatnot. And on the other hand, like there's this cosmopolitanism that's like seeming to also like I feel like they're also rejecting that in a way, weirdly. I don't know. That's why like I feel like there's tension between both wanting to be free on the one hand and also like rejecting this idea of like the cosmopolitan idea of being open and like vulnerable, being comfortable, sharing with each other, sort of thing that they're also shying away from, which is a conservatism almost. And that's kind of what is fascinating. That's like there's the doubleness of like both. Yeah,
I was gonna say, if I may, with that up until the last point, I was like right on with you that like look at like a movie like Baghdad Cafe, which wasn't really super successful in America, but like really struck a chord with people in Germany, which hits upon like the idea of like the wide open spaces of America as like not being a sense of adventure, as is often sort of characterized and put, but like ennui and deep loneliness and emptiness. And one of the reasons why Baghdad Cafe, completely separate film, connected with a lot of people is because this idea of connection in this like very lonely, arid space. And in a way, I believe Paris, Texas is about that as well. It's just that it's far less declarative in any way, shape, or form. It's sort of left more of the imagination of it. If it, is Harry Dean Stanton's character successful in reconnecting with his family and his child? I mean, considering how it ends, it's like, well, is it an objective success? No, but was it worth the effort? I mean, that goes to show you. Does it screw his kid up more having known him at all than only knowing the legend as told to him by like family members that were not a fan? I don't know, but it's all very tied in with those ideas of the open spaces being not like a sense of adventure, like, but yeah, like empty, but like not necessarily needing to be empty for forever.
I think on a similar vein to that, I guess, I would say that Westerns always have that at the end of it, right? The hero rides away. And I don't think fucking Harry Dean Stanton in this movie deserves to be called a hero, because he literally, attached a cowbell to his fucking wife, and so that he could tell when she moved, and he went fucking insane. And like, so like, he was incredibly abusive. I don't think, but the hero, right, the cowboy at the end of it rides away, which is what he does at the end of the movie. He realizes he can't put down his roots or whatever. He needs to keep moving. He doesn't deserve to sit down with his family. He's done too much. He wants to leave because the mother really misses the child, and he wants to leave them together, and he wants to just keep traveling, which, is the classic Western thing. The thing that I think the German, like the outside influence brings into it is that you actually see that these things have consequences, right? Like the kid doesn't really, like, the kid's screwed up by the fact that, like, I mean, not. I do like the line a lot where they're like, "Oh, you have two dads," and he's like, "Yeah, isn't that great?" Like, you know what I mean? I like that line, but like you could tell, like, they're all of a sudden this guy shows up, and the guy that he thought was his dad is like hey, I'm not exactly your dad. Here's a second dad. He's
Right.
he's your actual dad, but I'm still your dad. And you can tell the kid's confused by that fact. And then the dad just takes him, you know what I mean? Like from the
Yeah.
family and just like, all right, let's go find your mom, who he
Let's
doesn't
go this
remember.
weird, like non-sanctioned adventure.
Yeah. And then he has him hang up on the
Kidnapping over state lines. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, non-sanctioned adventure, right?
Right.
And then takes him to a bar.
Yeah, exactly.
and he's getting drunk, and the
leaves
kid's like,
him in
hey,
the
maybe
car.
don't.
Yeah, exactly.
The kid's like, hey, maybe don't drink that much. And then he's like, yeah, fuck you, kid, and keeps drinking.
Yeah,
The
that's what's
kid's
like.
I don't like
Father of the
kid's
year.
like, I don't. He's like I don't like the smell of the alcohol or something when you do this. And he's like, and just keeps drinking and lets the kid fucking run around the bar. And he
But,
also
like,
he also leaves him in the car outside of a strip club, which I didn't, or not. What I mean, it's kind of a therapeutic nudie booth area. I don't know. It's the way that the direct, like, because I couldn't exactly tell what it was, and then I listened to the DVD commentary, and apparently it was thought of as like a place for men to go talk out their issues, but also like it was voyeuristic. And I was like, isn't that just like, besides the voyeuristic part, like, isn't that just therapy? Like, are you just inventing
it
an
looks like confession.
Like he created Chatterbait. Like that's what it is.
Yeah.
Like that's what I was feeling. So when Karthik said the part about like it being kind of a premonition of social media, when I was watching, when it got to that part, I was like, that's OnlyFans. Like this is what I do. I am being perceived. People can see me, but I never see what, my subs are doing. Like I never, and some of them I don't even see their faces. Some of it is like completely anonymous. And like, this guy just invented like cam girls without like
Right.
knowing that he invented cam girls.
Like 36 years ago. What is it? 37 years ago?
Yeah.
Well, he's a visionary, but
Right.
I was just thinking about the fact that, all right, so he was talking about it in this clip, and it's somewhere in this folder. I'm not gonna grab it, but he's talking about it in this clip, and he's talking about how he's like, I envision this as like the booths are there, but it's mostly for men to just come and talk about things, and the women talk, and like, there is the element of like seeing the women and stuff, like the voyeuristic element of it, but I don't actually think that it's like the sexual element of it. It's the therapeutic element of it. I'm like, so this is what Germans are so against therapy. I feel like that like this German man has created this entire, because he calls it like a voyeuristic theme park. Like you built a whole theme park. He's talking about building it piece by piece and all these like things. Like you built a whole theme park to avoid talking about therapy. Like you just had the
Yeah, and I think confession. Basically, I feel like this was almost like a sort of you're turned away. It's impersonal in a way, and like. The confession is in like third person. The person doesn't speak in in I and you, which was kind of I think the whole catharsis of like everything that he wanted to get out of the system, he gets out, but he still like doesn't really allow himself the pleasure even of sharing or making a real connection, which was kind of the it's like there's always a wall between him and whoever he's talking to, and that's I think symbolized by the glass wall, literally. And even when even this backdrop, I think like signifies the kind of like repetitious nature by which like all of the walls show up. Like even here, like you think that you're seeing the entire cityscape, but you're really not. I mean, like you're pretty much like a bird in a cage. If you're sitting in one of these skyscrapers and that's your 9 to 5.
Yeah.
So I think like basically it's already started, except that like the walls have I mean like the walls have just like closed in. I think basically they've just been closing in over time. But it's been happening since, like, and Wim Wenders clearly sees that. And the fugue, basically coming back to the fugue, it takes him to the most polar opposite of this, which is that like he kind of almost wants to see no horizon and no end to where he's going, as opposed to like just being trapped behind this wall. And yet it's so funny, like even then, like he's still not able to kind of like bring himself out, even when he has the opportunity to kind of share. And that's what do you think that has to do with?
Well, I think that's very prescient.
I was just thinking about a point. well, first, I guess Marina's point kind of made me think of it. It's kind of also like Her, the Joaquin Phoenix movie, where he's just like, I mean, obviously the computers at that point are like, or Amy Tyrese computers are, are I don't know. I went on a whole thing the other day about how I think Amy Tyrese is an AI that just is designed to like cut conservative guys. But anyway,
she's like a Siri that's gone horribly wrong.
Yeah, but anyway,
Yeah.
that kind of, but I feel like that kind of movie, right, where it's just an AI and you're meant to talk to it, and like whether or not you're lonely in this techno dystopia in some ways, maybe. I mean, depending on who you are, I guess, in it, but like lonely men, you don't become the Joker because you have a computer to talk to, and in a similar way in this, I think you show up, and I mean, it's a real life, and you're seeing a real life person because it's the 80s, and you don't need to, like, it doesn't have to be a robot. We've progressed past that now, and you can just talk to a robot, I guess, but it's kind of the
innovation.
But it's like kind of taking away even that movie's kind of a similar thing, right? Like he's just talking to you're just supposed to talk to the voice, and it talks to you back, and like then you feel like maybe you're interacting with somebody, and it's designed to kind of like meet your needs or like your pleasures, and not really push back against stuff, and you feel like there's somebody in your life that cares about you, that's listening to you. In the same way, I think this is kind of designed in this movie to have that, but of course it's a real person on the other side of it.
Well, I think that also the whole, like, look at like our society now, right? Like we celebrate the individual without supporting the needs of the individual. And how is that better shown than like he desperately wants to like make this connection, but it's like this, like through this like walled garden, like literally walls, but like this walled garden of like the interaction is like artifice and false, and like there's very little that's real about it, but still there's a yearning to make a connection. So that's hence the phone, right? But you only want to make a connection, you want to make it on like the terms, the on the fields of battle, so to speak. And why is that so incredibly heartbreaking? Well, because look at how we have to interact with each other now, whether it's like pre or during or post COVID, like we have to use these mechanisms to communicate. And, that's heavy. That's heavy, and that's real. And it doesn't stop things from being important or being poignant. In fact, I mean, I gotta say, like, we're kind of stuck on it a little bit. The mirror scene is like, I mean, good Lord, that's like one of my favorite scenes in cinema. That's just like, it's astounding. And then like what is really being done? It's two people staring at each other, right? But it means so much. And it takes someone like Wim Wenders to just slow things down to that level where you're just it's people, what is it, people vibing. But like really though, I mean, like it's this raw emotion, and it does in a way that like nobody has to like say almost anything. Like what is really being said in those scenes?
By the way, I was talking to Karthik earlier about how I felt like it was kind of a play, like in some ways, like when they're talking to each other in that scene, right? She's facing out like towards an audience in the same body language as you would in like a play where two people are talking but they're not facing each other. Like, and I was watching that DVD commentary, and I made this point before I watched this part, but he was talking about how they literally did it like a play, like they meant to do it like a one-act play, because Sam Shepard's like the words on the page were so like poignant, they felt like, and were so important, like they treated it like a play. And when you see I noticed like the height of it, I think, is when she's facing outwards and then he's in the booth, and there's this one shot, and let me see if I have it, but he's like, so she's facing outwards towards us, and he's facing on the other way in the screen, and he's almost in like a theater box, but he's also kind of on a stage, and it's like he's projecting himself out on the stage. And I was like, wow, this reminds me a lot of a play. Like I feel like that's because they can't really move outside of those spaces, which is of course honest, like when people are doing theater, like they have to make all of those they have to make the entire thing work within that small space. And in this, it's even smaller because it's just, a booth. So I was like, yeah, it feels like that. And then I was watching the commentary, and he's like, yeah, we treated it like a play. Like it literally was just like we put a play on it. I was like,
that's one reason why it works. And then you think about the fact that like the kid's stuck in the car, and you're like, Dick,
you told you to keep up the windows in Texas? Yeah, crack those things. Give them a bowl of water. Be human.
But the kid can
yeah.
drive the car, right? Like, isn't that the whole point? The kid's actually like kind of a wonder kid because like he was
He
left
has two dads.
abandoned as a
Yes.
child, so he had to raise himself and stuff like
He
that.
has
So
two straight dads. I don't, you know.
Weird. Hey, Conan, I got a question for you. Have you ever covered Hotline Operator by The?
No, I do like the though.
It's a great song.
Yeah.
It just totally your whole monologue there. I'm just sitting there thinking like, I'm just hearing like you singing Hotline Operator. You know, so
I'll speak to my people. We'll take it under
yeah,
advisement.
yeah.
All right, so I have a clip
right.
So I don't even remember what the point was that it hit a point that we made perfectly, and I don't remember what point it was. But you know what? I stayed up all night to try to get a thing together for this episode because I was doing it mad last minute, and it was a really long movie, so I don't need to remember things.
I'm still watching the movie right now.
It's funny he's talking about being old then. Like y'all see Twin Peaks: The Return where he's like 170 or something, like where it's like
I watched a clip
Old.
from 2015, 2 days before, or 2 years, before he died, where he was telling that exact same story, but was super old. So the story was like
Right.
so it was that story, and like so he told that story quickly on that clip, and then he was like, but it was like word for word the same exact. So like kind of fucked me up because he was saying it so fast then, and then he's like, I don't know. I almost clipped the second one, and I was like, no, I'm not gonna clip that one.
It's pretty cool that you brought out. I think this is the first time that we have revealed that the character's name is Travis, which I think is an important like kind of point to even discuss because like we can talk about the similarities between like Harry Dean Stanton's character in Paris, Texas, and like Travis Bickle and Jodie Foster's relationship in Taxi Driver, and how this relationship could almost be their relationship, weirdly enough, because like the age gap and the kind of like approach
He just
that
happened to be a little bit
like,
older. He just happened to be like maybe a little bit older when you know what I mean?
think
like
about the same age, and it's kind of even being implied the age inappropriateness of the relationship, and like that's kind of like
well, they say you're a 25-year-old girl at one point. So whatever happened within the 4 years that between them, when he got caught on fire, she would have had to be 21. She's 25 when he goes and meets her. With the 4
But he's
years.
like about 50 years old.
Yeah, he's like 50
like
something.
45.
Yeah, he's like old.
Yes, and I think that kind of is a parallel to how old Robert De Niro was in Taxi Driver compared to Jodie Foster's like 15
she would have
or
been
something
17 when she had the child too.
Something like that. So I mean, like I don't want to be like too accurate about it, but
a bunch of math majors in this show, but yeah, absolutely.
By the way, one more thing, it's crazy to see something after watching Breaking Bad as many times as I have, where the character Walt saves someone else in the fugue state, because there's the episode in like the second season of Breaking Bad where Walt goes into the fugue state into the desert.
I'm glad fugue states aren't like a movie trope as much as they are, though. Like it's like it's beautiful in this, but it's like, all right, if you saw like, I don't know, Adam Driver doing it, like, all right, whatever, fugue state.
It's a little bit of a Deus Machina also in a kind of way. It's like, it's something that he can get away with by saying, yeah, he was in a fugue state. And like,
yeah, it's in fugue state. There you go.
Yeah, fugue state.
We can skip a couple pages of writing.
But that's kind of what they did in Breaking Bad. Like he faked the fugue state so that everyone would just be like, oh, well, why were you in your underwear in a grocery store? Fugue state. So like,
all that said, I love Memento, and like that's all, that's awesome. So it can be done really well. And that's not a fugue state, but that's like the same storytelling mechanism.
I haven't seen Memento, but I have abused Xanax, and I feel like that's the same thing. So
he's gonna get random tattoos that anyway, whatever. I won't spoil it for you.
and maybe accidentally pick up someone's shit from their house and leave with it.
Marina, you're on this show. You got any thoughts on any of that stuff?
On fugue states?
Yeah,
or on Xanax, I don't know.
I'm on one right now. Like,
whatever.
I thought it. I really like don't know what to think of whether or not he was really like, was he really in a fugue state, or is he just so embarrassed by himself, that he wants to be in this state, you know, that he needs the excuse to like punish himself almost for 4 years in the desert.
Biblically,
kind
like
of
a coping mechanism or something, right? Yeah.
Well, which also kind of makes it biblical, right? Like he's paying penance by wandering through the wilderness for as long.
He's like the Israelites, and because they had the golden calf.
I mean, there's definitely
and he had the cowbell. He had a cowbell.
He had a
She
very
was his
strict
golden calf.
shame.
When they like when that happened, I like had to stop the movie and just go,
What?
You did what?
Who did what now?
Like that was so shocking without having to see any of it, which I really appreciate. Like there's a lot of films where it's like, okay, they want to portray the violence against the woman on screen almost as a sick form of sadism for the viewers. And this one, like I was like completely like shocked, but not in a traumatic kind of way. And I really appreciate that. And then also just the way that they did do this kind of like sex worker scene where it isn't this like gratuitous, voyeuristic, like she doesn't even get naked. He doesn't actually like pursue her and like take advantage of her not knowing who he is. I think it really did that really well. Like, and it aged well. It aged like very, very well.
He's seeking ultimate forgiveness, right? Like he's seeking absolution, which brings it back to that religious theme, I think, because he's begging for forgiveness. But then within that confessional thing, I don't remember like whether it was Karthik or Conan who said earlier, like it's kind of a confession, or I don't know. I have too many co-hosts now.
Okay, just attribute you to the show and move on. It's okay.
No, so it's almost like this confessional thing. But like, I mean, which is the true thing about confessionals, right? Like you don't start with the craziest thing. You start with like, you know, well, the relationship wasn't going so well. And then all of a sudden, you know, things got weird. And then I was afraid she didn't love me, and I was trying to make her jealous. And then, you know, she wasn't jealous, and I was getting upset that she wasn't jealous, and she wanted to leave. So then I attached a cowbell to her so that when she moved, I could hear her, and then she couldn't get away. And then I chained her to the bed, and you're like, wait.
Yeah, it's like whoa, back it up there, son. Whoa, hold on. Like, take it 2 clicks back.
The thing is,
so that kind of
like
that kind of brings us to the question of like also, you know, even Taxi Driver, like the end, you know, he thinks that he's always out to do the right thing. Like he wants to save the girl. He wants to, like, you know, rescue the kind of poor lamb who has fallen into the kind of cracks of the system, and so on. And at the same time, what is he really acting out of is a question. Like we kind of really don't get a, you know,
well, the taxi driver,
a moralistic answer we're getting, but we're not really getting an answer that is actually true. We're getting like he's even the scene where he says, like, you know, he doesn't pursue her, take advantage of her. Yes, that's one interpretation. But on the other hand, like he's extremely kind of almost like tight wound, and like he's not even willing to open himself up to the possibility that, like, you know, he doesn't even want it to continue in that direction, because he's just so embarrassed of what he has done, what he is, etc. And like I don't know what kind of it's the mirror, right? Like it's the same thing with Travis as well. Like I don't know how much he was trying to rescue her, as much as he was like extremely embarrassed of looking at that reflection of his own face in what was going on. And I think that's kind of like an interesting thing to explore as well. Like what is that?
If you want to see fear, hold up a mirror.
My taxi driver thing at the end of it, when I watched it, I mean, I've watched it a million times, but like at the end of it, the thing that really strikes me about Taxi Driver in the end is that the moral of it is in an extreme gray area, where if he had killed the presidential candidate that, or like, you know what I mean, the candidate that he wanted to kill originally to impress that girl, then he would be in prison for the rest of his fucking life. He'd be like John Hinckley or whatever, you know what I mean? Like he'd be, you know, like, well, he's out now, but you know, he'd be like a president or a presidential candidate assassin. He'd be like, you know, so, but then because he killed the right people and became a vigilante, but because he was like
became a cop,
with an but because he was obsessed with an underage girl and wanted to have, like, was having sexual fantasies about an underage girl, that part, like, it's kind of this ironic twist of fate where it's like, oh, well, you just happen to kill the right guys. You're mentally ill as fuck. like you're not someone that can survive in society, but you happen to kill the right guys, so you're kind of absolved in the face of the law on this issue.
But here's the kind of flip side to that,
Which is
right?
something that
Like,
can only
he
happen in
does-
the 70s, by the way.
he
I don't think
wants-
after the 70s, I don't think you can make that point after the 70s and have it be okay. I think after that point, the vigilante thing is like, yeah.
Well, I
I
mean,
don't-
after
I-
that, you
I don't
can't go
think
to
it's
you can't really go to the theater to jack off either. So I mean, lots of things change.
I don't think it's
also like the
I mean,
the,
hey, maybe you
vigilante movies changed too, like in the 80s, because you had vigilante movies like Death Wish in the 70s, and then in the 80s you got more like the Stallone type or the Punisher, I think in 89. It seemed more like a revenge flick than a comic book adaptation.
And of course, our big vigilante movie, 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you.
Yes,
They
Freddy
pay for
Krueger was
that
the hero of the movie.
vigilantism dearly.
I kind of was like, the vigilante aspect is one, but the other aspect is like basically the need to rescue somebody from the clutches of like promiscuity, and that seems to be one other aspect. Like on the one side, you could call it like degradation, loss of self, dehumanization, etc. But on the other hand, he's also kind of like an extremely puritanical person. Like he does have that about him as well, and I don't know, and it's very heavily implied here too in the kind of almost shocking reaction that he has when she is about to like take her sweater off, and he's like, no, don't do it, and it's like it's almost like a cry of like, please don't, kind of like he's like willfully, like,
Nobody wants to
celibate person or
fantasize about
something
their
like that.
wife. No, I'm just kidding. Marina, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I definitely did get that kind of like the like, well, I mean the whole like thing behind making it this so that they're not touching each other, they're behind, like I get that it looks like a confession and all of this stuff, but it does also have this like, you want to keep her pure and keep the appearance of her pure, and so that she stays the way that he envisions her or like fantasizes about her, or just like became so like mentally disturbed by how much he loved her that like when he leaves, he's just, okay, so you just left this child with a sex worker, like the man that she's standing with is obviously her pimp, like, and he looks terrifying.
Yeah, just some cool guy hanging out,
Yeah, so it's just like
Oh,
John Lurie's not a pimp, is he?
Yeah, so it definitely did have that kind of like Captain Save a Ho, a little feeling there.
but he also leaves his fucking kid in the car. You know what I mean? Like he's
leaving the kid everywhere. He's a terrible father, really.
And the kid has good parents. The aunt and uncle are great parents. They like dote over that kid so much. And then the fucking alcoholic dad comes back and he's like, "Hey kid, we're going to find we're going to find your mom at this at the series of booths. Stay in the car."
I'm gonna
we're gonna make you a latchkey kid.
Yeah.
It also kind of like allegorically seems to suggest that the fallout of like, if you can see Dean Stockwell, probably important to keep him, in our conversation as well, because he's the man of the hour. But
he's the stability. He's like the good kid, right?
Yeah, he's like
I have a really
good
Dean Stockwell clip for the end of the show. So we'll keep him in our. We'll keep him.
Yeah, I mean, like I was just getting to the point that like he's the guy who's got his he's the Mr. Success, like he's the Greg Kinnear character from Little Miss Sunshine, and that's what I was like kind of going for, which is that Steve Carell's character is like the brother, and Harry Dean Stanton, and like it's almost like interesting that they're lookalikes, that they also have the full beard and like dazed, and essentially it's people who are like intimidated by their own possible like normal boring lives or something like that, and like that's what they're afraid and running away from, to the extent that they have to like put themselves through this trouble to feel a little like more than that is going on for them. And I think that's kind of what we're coming to as well, like, which is that like what is success really, and what is like this person's aversion towards it. And if you look at that, it's basically he's like the kind of hippie character who goes to the edges of it and then comes back and he realizes that he's like somewhat of almost like conservative in a view, like in a narrow
Only when it comes to
way.
women.
And like kind of on the flip side, his like muse, and I think that's what the young person also suggests, like I don't know how much of this is like an equal a partner sort of, it's more like a muse sort of allegory is what it feels like, because it cannot possibly be an equal because she doesn't really even compare in a sort of way. It feels almost like he's a father figure to her, and I think that's kind of the other thing that I was like also, what did you think about that aspect? Like, did you really feel like they were equals in that sense?
I kind of felt like she was this empty vessel, like he was through most of the movie, because like we're trying to figure out like why he went into the fugue state, what set him off, what broke up this relationship, how the kid got to the got to his brother's place. Like we don't have any of the pieces until the very, very end of the film. And so like when he's looking at the reflection, and seeing his face back in her frame, it's almost like, he's now filling her up with his expectations, just like we spent the entire film, putting our expectations into him.
But like in terms of her power, I was like curious to know, what level of like power does she even have, or how much of an influence does she have? Like, he's not even able to see a home video of her without like being extremely just like breaking to pieces, and yet like.
But it's the idea of her. It isn't necessarily her. It's the idea of her. It's like his idea.
Do you love me or do you love the idea of me?
And she also like speaks in a fake Southern accent, which is kind of funny. I thought that
she's I can't remember if she's
German.
She's German. She's a German actress.
Yes.
So her fake Southern accent is just her trying to do a Southern accent.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah, and apparently a lot of people said, and I don't know if they were being like not sarcastic, but I don't know if they were just being like complimentary. But when I was watching that DVD that or whatever, I don't know if it's DVD commentary or just Criterion commentary. Wim Wenders says he was like, yeah, so many people were just like, that was such a good Southern accent. She was so good at it. And I was like, have you heard of
she wasn't.
She was good.
Her performance was good.
Yeah, that's
her performance was fantastic. Like,
but it's objectively untrue that was a good Southern accent.
She had also though she had Red Scare vibes, and I didn't like it.
She looked like Bridget Bardot, like, which was kind of I felt like unmistakable in the way.
I just felt like she looked like one of the. I felt like she looked like one of the girls from Red Scare a little bit, and I was like, she's a
I don't
trad
think I've seen either of them. There's two, right?
Well, keep it that way. It's not. I mean, it's not.
Anyway, moving on.
I don't know. I do really like the shot, because not only is there the two hands going up as if he's like, but then obviously his hands on the actual phone, so it just makes it really, really weird. Yeah.
Yep. It's a very David Lynchian in its way. It's a very the composition of it just being like, think about what's happening in that exchange and what's literally in the mirror.
I forgot to look up the DP before before we came on. Did he work with Lynch at all? The director of photography?
No, I assumed it wasn't Deep Penetration. Yeah, I don't know. Let me look.
I was just kind of curious.
I'm pretty sure he was also German.
Is it Robbie Mueller? I think, right? Robbie Mueller did
he was like
Repo Man, Mystery Chain, did a bunch of Jarmusch stuff. Dead Man.
He did. Wait, if he did Repo Man, that was the same year. That would mean that him and Harry Dean Stanton. I think this movie was filmed. I was trying to do the math because they have like dates of when things were filmed. It might have been between the time that they paused the filming of this movie that Repo Man got filmed, and then Harry Dean Stanton came back, which is kind of crazy because both those movies dropped in 1984. Orwellian, man.
Nice. I
think not.
I totally forgot that we watched him in that movie. Like it.
Yeah.
Just like.
I
brought
didn't.
back
I
that.
didn't because I kept thinking about that movie when I was watching. But because the colors made me like the bright greens made me think of Repo Man.
And
then I
also
was like-
because ordinary fucking people, you hate them. Also, that too.
No, I one thing that I wanted to bring up, I don't remember when the conversation this was, but I also think that when you were saying Karthik, when you were saying the kind of like almost like a hippie character, I don't think it was that. I think he's supposed to be. I mean, he is inherently a conservative character because he's kind of the cowboy. He's the cowboy archetype, right? Like in some ways, like and cowboys are like one of the few, I feel like, heroes that are allowed to be like kind of anti-heroes early on, right? Like they're imperfect people that are just kind of wandering, but then because the fact that they have such a strong code, everyone's like, well, they might be imperfect, they might drink too much, they might just go around looking for girls, but like whatever is in the code that, like, at the time, you know what I mean, like earlier than I think other anti-heroes were allowed to exist, like Clint Eastwood's.
That's just so people could sell cigarettes, right? Like, wasn't that the point of it?
But like, but so I feel like he's kind of that cowboy archetype, but which is also inherently that code is inherently conservative. It's like he's allowed to get away with like he's allowed to get away with kind of like fucking around with a bunch of things that maybe another hero wouldn't be, because he's kind of out in the middle of nowhere. He's in the wilderness and he's like this, this kind of haggard person. But at the same time, the code of it is like, I'm going to save a woman, a damsel in distress needs help, and I'm there to do it. And you know what I mean? So like, it's like an inherently conservative trope, I think.
But it's also a person who has no purpose in and of himself, like in that case, right? Like, and that's kind of, I think, the kind of conundrum of the existential hero in the American sense, which is that, like, what is your role really? Who are you? And it's like, you're a person when you're a hand, you're a person who's of help when the help is needed, but like, who are you unto yourself? I think like that's one of the reasons why he kind of has to take the step back and leave also, because I feel like he doesn't really have a place in anybody's life, and that's kind of the tragedy of it. Like, despite the fact that he's a perfectly all right guy, I don't think that like there's any he doesn't feel first of all that he adds any value to anybody's life, and that's kind of pretty fascinating. What is the reason why he feels like he is like this Charlie Chaplin character who can just like take himself out of the movie by the end?
He's doing the opposite. He has added negatively to every life. Every life that's supposedly close to him, he's added negatively towards. He abandoned the family, left the kid, literally put a fucking cowbell obviously on the wife, but then also,
but what does it all mean? Like, that's the question.
The brother, well, it
needs more cowbell.
More cowbell. I got a fever.
I almost made it through one with
what is his problem? Like, if you were to ask.
I think he's trying to undo the damage that he caused, but then he feels like he doesn't deserve to be in society. Like
that's always the Western thing, right? Like,
yeah, there's like, he and like it actually goes back to like the pioneer kind of thing. If you read the Little House on the Prairie books, we decided completely non-canon interpretation that and you can read it totally read it this way, that Laura's father was mentally ill, which is why he kept moving the family out west to get away from people, like
which assumedly I think was probably like the reason that a good amount of people, I mean, like left certain areas to like move farther.
Yeah, I mean, there are different reasons to do it, but like he never really had a reason to do it if you actually read the books. And so like Harry Dean Stanton actually kind of reminded me a bit of that, where like he has this weird like repulsion of society because Wisconsin became too crowded for him. And I know Conan's laughing right now with that thought. But in the 18 whatever's 70s, I think the books took place in 18 yeah, we'll go with 1870s. But like you can totally see like as the books kind of go on, he's constantly retreating from society, and it's almost like that kind of character is kind of connected to a lot of the cowboy themes, where these people are also kind of rejecting society in their own ways.
Calm down there, Adam Curtis.
which were kind of like Forrest and I were talking about this, like is the kind of American libertarian, like this, if you were to argue that the cowboy drifter is like a libertarian sort of mythological aspirational aspirational character, then do you think that like it is directly tied to just like colonial expansion or like imperial expansion, like at the absence of it, it just like relapses into this kind of fantasy land that you're thinking Paris, Texas, which doesn't exist except anywhere except in your head. It's like it's a state of mind that you're constantly searching, except you're never going to find it, because your reality is no longer an imperialist, like at least at the personal one individual level. You could never like just go to a piece of land and claim it anymore. So
Marina, do you have any thoughts on any of this?
Hey, can I just say one thing real quickly before I'm sorry to just to tie back to Karthik and what I was saying before. Rose, the daughter of Laura Ingalls Wilder, who ended up editing the text for the Little House books, was a diehard libertarian and kind of rewrote her mother's manuscripts to become libertarian propaganda. So the books are fascinating on lots of different levels. So I'm just putting that out there. I'm sorry, Marina. Go right ahead, please.
Marina fell asleep at this point, trying to wait.
Brain off. Yeah.
You're in the fugue now.
Yeah, I'm in the fugue.
That's gonna be the revamp, right? Like it's gonna be where Harry Dean Stanton's character is not played by a man who anymore, and that's gonna be the new
More women fugues. And Christopher Nolan's gonna direct it.
But I mean,
you've given him an idea.
Yeah, exactly. But real talk. I mean, do you think that the Harry Dean Stanton character like knows what he did wrong? I mean, do we think he's that self-aware? Because I don't feel that way.
There's a rock bottom, but
I think he's self-aware. I think he's self-aware, and I think that I don't know. Maybe that this is just like me kind of projecting my own like eldest child kind of like life, kind of having that like being the oldest child, having to kind of live up to this thing. And he always like keeps referring back to like his parents and just this like, oh, well, they must have like I must have come about when they met in Paris, Texas. And it just seems to like be this kind of like, he's aware of that. He's trying to get to this place, to this like realm of the ideal, that it's like this untouched land. I don't know where I'm going with this. It was just like,
no, it's like the idea of it, right? The idea, like it's like there is an actual Paris, Texas, but to him, it's more important the idea of it. The idea he like, right. I have bought this land. This land is mine, and the world that I want to see built and that I believe needs to be built will happen here. And he wants it so hard, he has actually begun to believe it himself, to the point that Dean Stockwell actually has to kind of be like, bro, let's get a grip here. Not exactly.
I was reminded of Jim Carrey, wanting to go to Fiji in The Truman Show, and like how Fiji was like the place that he always wanted to
solve
go.
all your problems. It's the only, it's the only place you ever need to be. Yeah, all the hassles of the world just melt away. Like, like it's that same principle. And the idea of, think about like this kid. This is a guy that he's fucked up a lot. He did some kind of like not that cool stuff, and he knows it to the point that whether it's a legit fugue state or whether it's a self-induced fugue state as the coping mechanism, as we discussed earlier, doesn't really matter, because for him, his way out of it is this fantastical notion of creating a idyllic society that in some part of his brain he knows is not going to, that's not going to happen. He knows it, and that makes him sadder.
Who the fuck are you guys, and where am I?
But it's like, I think it's the title of the movie, right? It's the titular line. But there is an actual Paris, Texas. That it's tiny. It's kind of somewhat unremarkable. And
I'm sorry, Paris, Texas. We love you.
Apologies to the Paris, Texas viewers and listeners. But the point is, it's a perfect kind of place if you're someone that is just so lost in themselves and their decisions that you'd be like, hey, you know what? I could buy that little scrap of land over there. I could, build a house on it. I could do this. I could do that. Like,
My
of
parents
course,
probably
it's a
fucked
story
on
you
that
tell
land.
Which
Paris,
is exactly
Texas.
what was becoming impossible more and more, right? Like with time at that
But
time.
literally, he
especially.
did. He was like, my parents fucked on that land. Let me buy it.
Is Paris,
Yes.
Texas, where they have the Versailles store that's in the middle of nowhere? Like it's an art thing where they have like a fake Versailles store.
Like, are you even Versace?
Yeah. Oh wait, I'm referencing the wrong episode.
By the way,
was
this
for
movie
Showgirls.
was kind of reverse Showgirls.
You get the Versailles stores over there. Oh,
It was strange to watch this movie after doing Showgirls as our last episode, because like I feel like this movie is like everything, like this movie is a very, very tame, because I mean, in there, like there's not even nudity in the voyeuristic booths that they go into, and he's chasing after like his last, like he's chasing after his wife. Like I feel like there's so many just reverse kind of things in this movie that
Yeah, the kind of lack of nudity is something that comes across in that
which this movie would be weird if there was nudity. It would be less enjoyable if there was nudity, just for the fact that it's like a very wholesome, in a lot of ways, at least until that last 10 minutes.
Which is what like basically, I mean, like exactly, you could say the same thing about Little Miss Sunshine as well. Like you thought that it was a completely
full
wholesome
frontal
movie,
nudity,
except
that's
for
a
the
very
last
different
10
movie.
minutes.
Yeah.
Sorry?
No, but I was gonna say, Showgirls to this, it is a stylistic U-turn in the way that, again, I was on that episode, and for a good reasons, because I don't think I care for the movie. But it's like, oh, they managed to find a way to make nudity boring.
We barely talked about the movie.
I'm sure, and that's fine. It doesn't matter. But the point is, fact is, how it fits in with this movie is the fact that, yeah, if there was nudity in like the mirror box scenes, like it wouldn't be nearly as poignant or interesting or cool. Like,
also, I don't want to see horny like Harry Dean Stanton like ogling his young wife. That would ruin the movie for me. He's like, I'm 50, you're 25. Let me see those titties. Like, no, I don't. That's not what I want out of this movie.
Yeah, like what you said, it's a very different kind of movie at that point, right? I mean, it's.
But kind of in the same way, right? This movie kind of toes an interesting line, because there's the escapism of wanting to see a protagonist of some. I mean, I don't necessarily think he is, but like that you think for most of the movie kind of is. He's just kind of with a code, and you want to see him like get his girl back, and you want to see him have a family and all this stuff. And in the same way that you do with like the escapist Western movies that everybody's kind of had for their whole lives, but then at the end you realize like, nah, this guy's a piece of shit at the same time, and it's like,
yeah. So I was gonna say, like, but do we? Because the whole time I'm thinking about that story with the cowbell, and it's like,
no, but what I'm saying is up until that point, it tanks really fucking fast at that one, because in what moment do you think that guy might be violent or jealous? Like, you don't throughout the whole movie. He just seems like kind of a sweet guy that's trying to figure out his thing, and you don't know what it is. And then that moment is dark. That's the one thing I guess it has in common with Showgirls. Like it's the equivalent of the rape scene in the Showgirls, where all of a sudden the entire intensity of the movie just suddenly shifts into like this dark space of like, oh fuck. But of course, here they didn't need to do it with any kind of sexuality. He just put a cowbell on.
In case anybody's wondering, it's a Prada shop in Marfa, Texas.
Marfa, of course. Yeah. Okay. No.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. Similar-ish vibes.
Yeah. Versailles, Marfa.
Yeah.
I was
anyway.
How many like shots? I just wanted to get in this. Like, how many shots of this movie had like such on the nose symbolism? Like, there was one in which like there was a Statue of Liberty into which like there's a door that opens, and the kid goes in, or he goes inside, and like there's another one with a Native American mural or something like that. And there were a lot of shots that kind of like had a very clear like framing that kind of actually showcases like a corniness. I felt like that was like it also an important part of the ethos of like having an ideal as opposed to just being cool with life itself. Which
because
what did you think?
Well, what I thought was also interesting, just kind of building on that, is that the movie wasn't like just shot in LA and pretended everything else was elsewhere. It was shot in Houston. It was shot in the middle of nowhere in Texas.
Oh, yeah,
it was
very
shot
real.
in California.
Those ATMs. I mean, it's very clearly like
they literally shot it on the highway in Houston, and in the DD commentary, he's like, "Oh, this is the best highway I've ever seen. This is the highway. If you want to shoot in the highway, this is the highway you go to."
Which Houston is nasty to drive in if you've never been there before, by the way.
But apparently has the best highways for putting two red cars in front of you and driving in front of them.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to end this pretty soon, just because it's getting to 10:30 already.
He doesn't want to be editing too much.
Don't mince words. Tell us how you feel.
Well, so far I think I would just put it up the way it is. So hopefully, Here is the clip that I promised that I would put on for Conan to talk about the music, and then I have the final clip of the Dean Stockwell talking about the climate. So those are the two clips I want to play before this wraps up. Here's Conan's specialty.
Raison d'etre.
On va dire que c'est peut-être le moment que j'aime le plus dans toute la production, le moment où arrive la musique, où on peut encore une fois mettre en question ce qu'on veut raconter, parce que la musique fait ça aussi. Pour moi, c'est la première fois que la musique composée pour le film coïncide, pour ainsi dire, avec la musique que j'aime dans ma vie privée, que j'écoute moi-même. Alors, il n'y aura qu'une musique dans ce film. En général, il y avait toujours deux niveaux de musique. La musique trouvée, quoi, le rock'n'roll dans les radios, dans les bars, partout, dans les voitures. Ça n'existera pas dans ce film-là. Dans ce film-là, il n'y aura que la musique de Ryder. Et alors, je ne crois pas qu'on peut dire utiliser parce qu'on dit on utilise des paysages, on utilise des hommes et des femmes. La musique, c'est aussi bien le sujet de ces films que, disons, les paysages. C'est aussi important que les histoires de ces personnages. La musique est un personnage central. Depuis le tout premier disque que j'ai entendu de Mike, c'était un rêve pour moi de travailler avec lui. C'était un autre rêve. Ce film-là, plus que d'autres films, a vraiment commencé avec des rêves, et pas des rêves de faire l'argent, de gagner beaucoup d'argent. Ça a commencé avec des rêves de collaboration. Depuis longtemps, j'ai voulu travailler sur quelque chose avec Sam Shepard, que j'admire beaucoup, comme écrivain. Et on aurait voulu travailler ensemble déjà sur Hammett, mais ça n'a pas marché. En tant qu'écrivain ou en tant qu'écrivain aussi bien qu'en tant d'acteur.
Rycooter has a glass eye. Most people don't know it. People are talking about it more and more. That dude has a glass eye. I'm not even kidding. He does.
Yeah, I'm glad Valley Film Guy isn't here because he would have just gotten pissed. I
didn't even do the voice.
More and more people are talking about it. By the way, let me shout out that James Austin Johnson got to do the actual Trump voice on Saturday Night Live. Yeah.
Exactly. Baldwin's had to kill somebody, and then the slot was open. Not wrong
More,
though.
more and more
So
people, more and more people are dying.
yeah, I mean, so Ry Cooder, an incredible player, he's played with everyone. Plays on my favorite Captain Beefheart and the Magic Band record, frankly, the most musical one, Safest Milk. Incredible, emblematic of the type of playing slide guitar player that is so perfect for this film, because there's kind of like this sort of like resigned sadness. I mean, think about like, and we get this any of this tear in your beer country music, right? You always got the slide guitar coming in, and that's Ry Cooder's thing. And this
You leave
almost
Hank Williams alone. Yo,
No, I mean, I love it. I'm saying it
Nobody
as
noticed for like a day.
But it's almost like Jim Jarmusch, like Dead Man, right? How Neil Young, like, can you think of that movie as being anything remotely close to the same without that soundtrack? Same thing with Paris, Texas. Like, would those
same thing with Jim Jarmusch's entire like filmography? It's like, let's put some good songs in here, and then no one will notice that it's just like very white indie actors talking for the next hour and a half.
I don't agree with any part of that. But anyway, the fact is matter is that it wouldn't be the same without like a slide guitar, like all over it, with these like wide open spaces and these large expanses of like, whether it's an actual landscape or an emotional landscape, like, God, it's perfect. And it's something that you'd be like, well, who should be the soundtrack for this? Like, can you imagine like Hans Zimmer? Can you imagine that? Wouldn't hit the same, right?
My God, no, it would be terrible.
It was really funny. So
Dune was painful because of him.
So I finally went and saw Dune. I mean, I texted you about it, but so I went and saw it, and like I went with my mom because I was we need to ride to the cinema or whatever. So then at the end of it, I was like, all right, do you remember anything that had like any of the music in this movie? Do you remember any of it? And she was like, no, I couldn't, like, and I was like, all right, well,
it was distracting when it shouldn't be, and it was forgettable when it was needed to be memorable.
The only memorable part of the music was like that, and the only reason why it was memorable was because I cut that clip when we did our Dune stream where Conan started talking and I went so every time that happened in the actual thing I was like, oh yeah, that's why I was fucking with Conan.
Yeah, that's the only reason it worked for you, is because you had a personal connection to it. I haven't heard it so many times.
Yeah,
Hans Zimmer would have scored
bullying based on that music.
Exactly.
Hans Zimmer makes people bully each other.
That's right.
I think he would have definitely filled that entire booth scene with like all sorts of music and
treacle. He would have filled it with treacle is what he would have filled it with, and it would have been terrible.
But I think what Ry Cooder does pretty brilliantly is like he almost paces the scene, that he tells you at what pace to move. It's like I found myself getting ahead of the scene like a lot of times, and he was like, no, you gotta slow down. This is like not gonna move for another. There were times when I actually was doing something else for like a couple of minutes, and then the scene was like still there, and it was nice. It was almost like we were fishing the whole time or something like that. It wasn't a very
by the way, speaking of fishing, my Jim Jarmusch comments come from the fact that my dad had this weird obsession with the fact he went to Jim Jarmusch's house once, and well, I've told you the story before. He like architecturally surveyed Jim Jarmusch's house. I've told this story like 10 times on this podcast. But so every time I hear, like, I think of Jim Jarmusch, I think of that, and then I'm like, I just want to mock Jim Jarmusch for that reason.
Yeah,
I actually
black and white movie with some motherfuckers talking to each other, huh? Why don't you get busy with
honestly,
that?
Wu-Tang Clan, they ain't nothing to fuck with.
I think what he's talking about is just the movie Down by Law, which
Down by Law,
does
Stranger in
stack up
Paradise
the
kind of
music.
qualifies too. But
does stack up the music at the beginning, and then most of the movie there's no music for the entire thing until the very, very end. So
I had a Dead Man poster in my room 5 years before I saw Dead Man, because my dad's like, oh, it's a Jim Jarmusch movie. I went to his house once, and I was like, all right. So like,
well, but from the perspective of someone that, by nature, maybe a musician, thinks a lot about music and film and how it can be.
He has good soundtracks. I remember we had the Broken Flowers soundtrack as a CD in my parents' car, and they would put it on randomly. But
Well, because he came from that same world as like Sonic Youth. I mean, Jack Richardson's even in one of his first movies, right? The original drummer of Sonic Youth.
also, it seemed like just an unhealthy obsession with Jim Jarmusch. He went to his house once, but I don't know. That's just.
But like, music can make a movie, and music can ruin a movie. And I think this is a perfect example of for many things that, like I said very early on, I think if this was made today, first of all, good luck. But like, it would be like a prestige television series. It would be like a 12 episode thing on
And
HBO
Johnny
Max.
Cash would be half the soundtrack.
Music only ruins the movie if your name rhymes with Bon Himmer.
But I think this is the perfect example of music making a movie, right? Like, and again, for the same reasons Karthik mentioned, that like the pace of it is so, I would say, unhurried. The what it does is like it makes you think about what's happening.
Wait, I have
And I mean, like,
and I think that's great. That's beautiful.
I've never watched what is it, Vin Williams movie?
Vin
Wim
Wenders.
Wenders. Anyways, I've never seen one of his movies before, but
a Ben Burgess movie.
I am very familiar with his soundtracks because I've had the Until the End of the World soundtrack since I was in high school. And look at me, I'm gray, I'm old.
Yeah, that soundtrack slaps.
My kid's
And,
turning
like,
18 like in a few months.
If I may, actually, about that soundtrack is also amazing because he had all the artists make unique music for it, and it's like Talking Heads and like Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds and like
Depeche Mode and Patti Smith, and
it's really awesome. Until the End of the World,
Lou Reed.
I'll go to the wall for that movie all day long. I used to have the VHS. I think it might have been. I'm remembering it as 3 VHS cassettes, but I might be exaggerating, or my memory might be exaggerating. But it's a long ass movie. Again, that also would most definitely be a prestige television series if it was made today.
I don't think the movie would. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I clipped this for Conan too. This is
Is this the last scene, Forrest?
This is the director's commentary of the last scene.
Okay,
he's talking about the music in it.
Stay with us, Marina.
I'm here.
My Cooper is playing Dark Was the Night, and maybe the song deserves its name in this scene more than in any other. Dark was the night. When Raikuda was recording this in front of the screen, I really had a strange feeling like he was reshooting the film one more time, only he didn't have a camera, he had a guitar. It was like he captured the spirit of the film so exactly in these sounds. It was like no other music could possibly fit to these images.
Somewhat prone to hyperbole, but not wrong.
Well, maybe if you're German, like maybe like
German, whatever.
Well, you see Western movies, you're like,
yeah,
you're like, yeah, that's what I wanted. That's what I want. Give me some more. Only that for the entire movie.
I was reminded of the scene, the last shot of Good Will Hunting, in which Matt Damon drives into the sunset because he's like going to go see about the girl. And what's interesting is that the song that plays is Elliott Smith's Miss Misery, and Elliott Smith is supposed to have this is supposed to be one of his most favorite movies, apparently. So I don't know if like he was kind of inspired by the soundtrack of this movie to kind of like even write the song or like to make the songs that became the soundtrack of Good Will Hunting.
But it's perfect. It's one of those songs that it wouldn't necessarily hit the same without it. Like it doesn't a yes and right is what they say in improv comedy. I hear.
Yeah, I wish you hadn't said that, but all right, let's move Conan. No, well, we're gonna pivot slightly to our good friend Dean Stockwell. He the
man.
He passed away. Great actor. I wanted to play this before I asked for final thoughts from everybody. and this is in 1992, I believe. He's on a talk show warning about climate change, and I thought this was a very poignant clip. I think I mean, you know, part of it is about the ozone layer, so it's 1992 version of climate change a little bit, but
Well, I mean, that was an issue in 1992.
yeah, no, it was, but I'm saying like so you know, it's not like
It was
not
like,
like-
I mean,
Yeah.
like you know, we got to kind of put it in its little box.
but he also kind of predicts a lot of other stuff pretty well in this, and I guess he was part of, like, he was one of the heads of an environmental group, and so I thought that a good way to send him off, I guess. And we're gonna have another Dean Stockwell episode, I think, next Wednesday when we talk about Blue Velvet. But I did want to and I'm sorry, Dean, that on Friday, you know, we're doing Scott Pilgrim versus the World, and we'll announce that at the end of it. But I'm sorry that it's not a, you know, we could I guess I could put his face onto it.
Superimpose it over Michael Cera's face.
Be a lot more interesting.
Yeah, he is not an interesting person. Anyway, except for in that one
Coming up next week, Michael Cera.
no, what is it? And like the End of the World movie with Seth Rogen and all them, where he's just on a shitload of cocaine and he's just like
Right.
There's no getting away from the fact that we have an extreme situation.
Yeah.
And with the ozone layer, that's one example, and maybe the most critical example that we got.
Okay, paint me a reasonably cataclysmic picture of what happens if we don't
Damn it,
rectify the
Miller.
ozone situation in the next generation.
Well,
You just can't go outside.
The
I mean,
worst
we're-
case scenario. No, it can get heavier than that. Already we have
Good
a
friend
great,
of
increase in
Sam
skin
Cedar.
cancers and cataracts, and reduction in the immune systems
Mhm.
from the UVBs that are coming through because of the reduction in the ozone layer. Now, the worst case scenario is the damage that can be done to the plankton, the photoplankton, which lives on the surface of the oceans of the world and is the first step in the food chain of the planet.
Okay, that
And
goes, and what goes
That,
next?
that goes, well, then the first step in the food chain is gone for the entire ocean. The ocean goes next, and you can take it from there.
Yeah,
So it's pretty
and we're all
drastic.
real thin a few
And we're
years
all
later.
real thin. We're in deep trouble. And another thing with it, it's a lot of people think it's a controversial issue, but it isn't anymore. The evidence is in, and the people distributing the evidence are NASA.
Mhm.
It's not some weird fringe group, and it's not even a group of private institutions or scientists. This is NASA evidence that
I'm not
shows.
sure I believe the general population believes it's controversial. I think they
No,
believe it. I
there
just
are
think they
groups
get
that try to promote the idea that it's controversial in order to inhibit action being
Limbaugh.
taken. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think people believe, but they get hit with so much now. It seems like everything. that-
Sorry,
Yeah,
can't help it.
I
There
know.
is so much. We've been so negligent for so long. We've got so much. We've got all these problems, but we got to deal with them. You know, life ain't easy anymore. And the problem is it's going to be harder and harder for the children and for their children. I went out in the sun when I was a kid. It was a main part of my childhood, a beauty of my childhood. And my children have to stay out of it as much as possible.
So we got to start now.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll come back. We're going to talk a little bit more about showbiz after this. Now, this is a pretty direct man to the people plea here, but what's your show do about it? Is your show adhere to these principles, or do you butt heads with those people?
Well,
over there?
I've been butting heads. I mean,
Why? What goes on there
that
that you don't
Well,
agree with?
it's not that it's not what I don't agree with. It's just they found difficulty in writing a quantum leap script centering on environmental issues. I have been striving for 3.5 years to get a show exclusively centered around an environmental issue. I hope next season, because we're picked up for another 22, that they will finally come through, and they have said they would. The best I've been able to do up to now is put in ad libs here and there about this and that, and I've succeeded in doing that.
I can't believe you just ought to take a walk.
So if I do-
Just don't show up one day. Well, the people. You know,
It's right up there now, 3. I have a little landfill of my own up there. You see a lot of the people look very disgruntled. They're right near my landfill. But all right, so we have that address one last time. This is Dean Stockwell, environmental champion. And can we put that address up one last time? Citizens for Better
I don't know why
Environment
the
West
show was a
Project,
wild success.
122. I guess we can talk about the show some other time.
Anyway, good on you, Dean Stockwell. Also, Dennis Miller fucking sucks.
Well,
I
this
was,
is
waiting for-
before he got bullied by Sam Cedar to the point where he just hid.
Yeah, I was waiting for him though to go with like, make a really, really dated joke, like, this is like Star Trek, or whatever. it is
That's
that
Dennis Miller.
Oh,
I've only seen him older and like when he was, I don't know. He's still as funny as he probably, I think, was in that clip.
I don't know.
I've mostly
Saturday Night Live.
I've mostly seen him when he's getting bullied by Andy Kilner and Sam Cedar on Majority Report. So I think that's hilarious every time that happens.
Kind of the best, but no, he was actually kind of funny in the 80s. But like the problem is he was anti-establishment, which means he didn't really stand for anything. He was just against whoever was in charge. So he's on Saturday Night Live making all these Reagan jokes, and now he's like cucking Reagan.
I'm happy someone made a Reagan reference before the end of the episode.
Wasn't Reagan president at the time of the movie coming out?
I know, and I was about to slip one in, but then the conversation was like more interesting than what the joke I was going to make, and I was like, I'm not going to.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, having nothing to do with that, good on Dean Stockwell for using his platform for something important. Like that's mad respect. The guy was a fantastic actor. His advocacy for like, from personal experience and for like child actors and for like making sure that they felt comfortable and they were safe and that like no one was exploiting them and stuff like that, based upon the fact that he was a child actor as well. What a cool guy.
And I'm glad he didn't leave his kids.
I'm just giving props.
I'm glad he didn't leave his kids in the car. Unlike that fucking Harry Dean Stanton.
Oh.
With the windows rolled up in Texas. If you're
you know what do you think about all
hot.
that? You've been locked out of the show for like 20 minutes. What do you think about all that?
Yeah.
Yep. Save the polar bears. That's yeah.
It's funny that they're talking about the ozone layer at the time, and it's like, that's one of the reasons why, like, I guess, like, there's skepticism and all of that, which is that like the narrative has like shifted so much, even from the point of view of advocacy, that is like, and right now, especially, as COP26, we saw the clip of Abby Martin ask the question.
Which, by the way, was Pelosi's response to it was like, I don't know. Pelosi's response to it was like someone that's just been like not ever challenged on anything. She was just like, she was aggressively playing with her scarf in a way that it was like, oh shit, this is the first time you've probably ever been challenged by like someone that wasn't like a Fox News guy being like, so you guys really like China, huh? You know what I mean? Like the first time she's ever been challenged by like someone that's actually making a valid challenge that isn't like a
no, she conceded though. I mean, I feel like, and that's kind of what is fascinating about this video as well, which is that like, the science has been settled since then, but like even today they concede basically that like the reason they're not defunding the military is because like they treat climate migration as a sort of threat that's going to become a national security threat apparently.
Well, eco-fascism was the scary thing about it is that, all right, so like we have a Republican Party that for the most part denies that the climate has any kind of crisis, right? Like they want to keep doing what they're doing. They want to keep the oil pumping. So they're just going to be like, hey, there's no climate crisis. But there's going to come a time when it's undeniable. Their response is going to be eco-fascism. Like it's not going to be, the response is not going to be, hey, we should do something about it. The response is going to be like, we should close the borders. We should make sure that like the worst people, like the worst, I guess, fit to survive in a libertarian, like anarchist society, like an anarcho-capitalist society.
That's why like Mad Max and Waterworld is a thing.
See the Mad Max Fury Road episode. Exactly. Yeah.
So it's like, it's terrifying to me because it's like in my brain, I'm like, hey, I really hope at some point everyone acknowledges that climate change is real. It's clearly coming. Everything's going to be fucked. And then the other part of my brain is like, no, when people acknowledge climate change is coming, they're just going to try to kill off a lot of the people that, you know what I mean? That they're going to be like, hey.
Did you see Ben Shapiro kind of shifting on it too recently? Like now he's like, well, climate change is real, but it's only going to affect a couple thousand people. And it's like,
and don't worry, guys, they're minorities, and I'm Ben Shapiro.
Yeah, just brown people is going to die.
Yeah, I mean,
we all look like Karthik.
I don't even know why we're giving that guy any airplay in here. But,
okay, that's what I have to cut out of this episode.
But I will say this: people fuck around about terraforming Mars. We need to terraform Earth. We're way past the point of conservation, and that's coming to someone that I consider myself a secular humanist. Like Carl Sagan sort of informed like a lot of my moralistic views, and ultimately the entire conversation is still talking.
I'm happy
about
you're not a big.
conservation.
I'm happy you didn't pivot to a like IDW fucking Joe Rogan what Dawkins guy,
Sam
Richard
Harris.
Dawkins guy.
Why would they do that? That has nothing to do with Carl Sagan. That's just like the new metal to like their Metallica's first record.
Dawkins quotes Carl Sagan pretty fucking frequently. I've heard.
Anyway, Dawkins is an atheism advocate. Carl Sagan was a humanist. There's a difference. Humanism means that religiosity is ostensibly irrelevant as long as it doesn't harm or infringe other people. Whereas atheism is more almost dogmatically anti. Sorry.
I know
Okay, so Dawkins is noble. What about Dokken?
Well, atheism.
Anyway,
atheism is on a spectrum of things because there's an atheism.
Every atheist I met's on the spectrum. So no. Sorry.
Well, I'm glad no one's dropped the R word in this conversation, unlike the last episode.
Well, so point of fact, and again, just the idea that the good name of Carl Sagan has been besmirched by folks that like Richard Dawkins, who, yes, I agree with you. Yes, you're a fucking dick. Is sort of like it's a bummer because the thing is, humanism means that you're looking at things without a moral code put together by religious dogma. So that's I'm deadly serious about all this, by the way. And in that same way, when we're talking about, whether it's some freaking billionaire or something talking about like, Mars bases and terraforming Mars, like we are literally past the point of conservation for this planet. We have to actually actively terraform this planet now. And I hate to get like super serious.
And that's why for $50, because I'm broke as fuck right now, you could buy my terraforming guy.
Just send it straight to Forrest.
All right.
My terraforming
everybody. There you go.
We're rounding on 2 hours. I don't want to get it past there. So I'm gonna go starting with Marina. Final thoughts on this movie, final thoughts on the stream, final thoughts on Carl Sagan, final thought whatever comes to mind.
Carl Sagan is so sexy. I thank you for having me on. Really enjoyed this. And yeah, just like it was great to get to watch a film that I probably wouldn't have ever selected for myself. And
that's been a big chunk of this podcast for me. I think is a big because a lot of the films that I've gone with, when people are like, "Oh, do you want to do this?" It's like something I haven't seen. So I'm like, yes. 100%.
Yeah. And I feel like I'm a better person for it. It was just it was a really long film, but it almost didn't feel that long. Like, I don't know, I was just so engrossed in it, and it's so beautiful. So I really enjoyed it, even though it got really wild in the last 10 minutes.
Yeah, the last 10 minutes is just like, oh, you could put a cowbell there.
Christopher Walken just shows up at the end.
You need more That's why she's escaping. Karthik, let me hear.
The post-credit scenes that introduces Repo Man. No, not really.
3 weeks earlier, or 3 weeks.
Sorry,
later,
I just thought of that bit like a second ago, so I had to get it in then.
No, all right. So I don't know. You queued me up already. Basically, I thought that
button.
I would begin with like the Travis connection and the fact that this is almost like I feel like this is Travis Bickle like getting lost in the middle of the Grand Canyon or something, or in the desert, and then
they're mirrors
having
in both movies.
Find his way back into a form of civil society that he can't stand, and also like having to go back, finding his purpose in it, and like going back, and like all of that narrative aside, I feel like I was just like constantly asking myself, what is the impulse or the motivation behind this character, and like by extension the movie itself. And I feel like the one scene which we didn't really discuss, and which kind of like I think beautifully sums the movie up, is the scene in which like the mom and the son reunite. And I think that, like, I don't know, man, like that was a performance that I didn't think could have been like faked. And I for a second, like I couldn't even believe that like she was able to do that with that kid. And I felt like that kid and Natasha almost had like a mother, young mother, and a very bright little kid kind of chemistry there, and it was like such a beautiful scene. And I feel like that's what it kind of came back to. It's just like a form of like familial mother's love, kind of like being in touch with that form of innocence kind of thing. And like something about Harry Dean Stanton's character is like gone beyond a point of no return, and he's just happy to have these two people being able to enjoy that at the end of the day. And I feel like this is the kind of thing that we were able to collectively enjoy together as a family in Little Miss Sunshine, where we, you know, kind of all like celebrated the kind of dysfunction. But here we only get to see two characters do that. Unfortunately, neither Greg Kinnear nor Steve Carell is able to participate in this celebration. But here it's just like the little kid and the mom, at least.
Well, Steve Carell to go back to The Office. Stupidest joke I made in the show so far. All right, Conan, let's hear it. I know Hans Zimmer scored this movie and you hate it. All right.
yeah. I like that I just had to say the name and everybody else attacked him now. It's great. It's like when the conservatives attacked Michael Moore in 2000s. I'll eat it. Well, Michael Moore.
I feel like
and then everyone just attacked him immediately.
I feel like we're forming like a ratio. I feel like, you know what I mean? Like there's a pile on.
Yeah, that's great. Everyone just knows he's a hack.
Cancel culture. Great. Cancel culture. It's coming for me.
My work here is done. No, but in all seriousness, you know, what a stunning, beautiful film this is. I mean, it's the pace is just glacial. You know, it moves so slowly and so deliberately, and I love that about it, because so many films wouldn't do that. They would just have the first half, and that would be the movie. They just have the second half or the middle half, and like this works and hits so much harder because of all the pieces that tie it all together. And the fact that it really is not just a character study, but it's not like saying declaratively, here's answers or here's like the way it is or whatever. There's just these like looming, aching regret and unfulfilled futures and poor decision making writ large, but not like
I had to think about you know, Mikey and Nikki for the same reason. Like,
yes,
while watching this, you know what I mean? Because we watched it so recently. Like, not the fact that, I mean, obviously, like this is a different movie and it's over a longer period of time, but like the fact that it's kind of a slow burn to the revelations in it aren't something that really is external. The revelations are something that you learn as a viewer, that you're trying to like over time learn from kind of an emotional state. And so during this movie, I kind of definitely thought about that a lot.
Well, and it's, you know, Wim Wenders is known for a certain type of movie, and you're either down with that or you're not, and I absolutely am. But like, in a way, this is kind of a paragon of his whole output, because it really does a thing that he's known for, but kind of transcends that as well. And it's just a really unique film. Like there's not anything quite like Paris, Texas. I mean, you know, if you short attention span theater, people are probably not going to love it. Right. Like I said, I think it would be like a 10-part, 12-part HBO series if it was made these days. But I love that it's like, it's all done in the course of a film, and you're made to slide guitar, like slide into it. And I think that's awesome. That's cool as hell.
Yeah.
And R.I.P. Dean Stockwell, because Dean Stockwell is the gallant of the Goofus and Gallant of the two of them, which is almost him playing against type for his latter day period, right?
Well, the entire it's kind of playing against type that Harry Dean Stanton is put at the front and center of this movie, right? Like,
yes,
I mean, he kind of, in some ways it was supporting, but like Repo Man came out at the same time and he was definitely at the forefront of that. But like, you know, putting character actors, I mean, it's an 80s thing or 70s, like the new Hollywood thing, definitely like putting character actors at the forefront of a movie as the main characters, allowing character actors to have like a romance or something, or to have a family. Like they kind of, you know,
people that look like real people.
Yeah.
You know, like flat. Like let's be real here. Like both of those dudes. Like it's not that they're necessarily unattractive, but they look like they live some goddamn life, you know. And that's I think that's great. And that, you know, we've gone back and forth with that for a while. If you wanted to see that kind of thing, you had like watch a Hal Hartley movie or something, right? Then if you know, then it sort of came back in vogue to a certain degree, and now it's sort of like, well, what's a character actor? Well, if you're a character actor, you're also a leading actor, and you have to do both. So good luck.
Well, I mean, so we're at a point where it's still kind of. I mean, we
Timothée
still have
Chalamet, Dune Redux coming up soon. Anyway,
yeah. Well,
sorry.
Hopefully,
hopefully, am I
Gene's
wrong?
baby
Am
doesn't
I
fuck that up.
wrong? No.
Hopefully, Gene's baby doesn't fuck that up. Yeah, that's right. Gene's.
Gene's going to be so wanting to get away from the baby at the point we do this. So like, don't worry, he'll be there.
We can keep talking for 3 hours. It's all right.
I'll be stoked. But yeah. But the point of pride is like this is a character actor's movie. I mean, even like as gorgeous as she is,
there's been a lot of those since. I don't think necessarily at this time. Like this is kind of the moment where they started doing that as a thing.
Well, absolutely, and it was influential in the way. But even like again, as gorgeous as she is, Natasha Kinski wasn't like, you know, a name actress or anything along those lines. But she had like the right presence and like the right, like, you know, feeling to embody, not just play, but embody this woman. And again, harkening back to Karthik's point with you know, when her and the kid get together, it's like, oh my God, how can you not feel something when you see that?
Well, it's also,
you know,
I mean, she's also a German actress, and this is like, you know, I mean, as a German DP,
sure,
but no, I'm not saying it as in, I'm not downplaying her, you know, her role in it. By that, I'm just saying like it's interesting because at the beginning of the movie, it's like a collaboration between Germany and France. That's literally what the title says at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that I think this European style of acting, right, is embodied in this because it wouldn't have been brought out in any other. Like an American director is not going to be like, hey, does a German person want to have a Southern accent? Like that, no American director would do that.
As specious of a call as it may have been, yeah. But then there's also like
maybe Mel Brooks.
But there's also kind of the secret thing of that you'd be like, well, maybe she actually is German and is trying to like sound like a local too. And you have to wonder about that yourself, because Wim Wenders is not remotely interested in telling you one way or the other. It's just he's painting the picture.
He's too German for that.
And easily, like there is a German population and a German dialect that is spoken in Texas. Like he could have easily have leaned into that instead. And you know, instead we got this character that, like I think the bad Southern accent helps the performance. Like I would argue, like it makes her seem like she's trying to be something. Like she's never found herself, so she's always trying to be something else for everybody.
All right, Andy, going to you last. One thing I want to say before that is I think it's really hilarious that Dean Stockwell throughout the first two scenes of this movie has a Stetson trucker cap. I don't know. I thought that was really funny. That's my.
I love that hat. It's just great. It's like all the cows. And it's amazing.
All right, it's down to you. Let's hear some final thoughts.
Well, first of all, this movie made me want to bring on Conan onto my show, Bad Takes, and discuss Jason X, so we can compare and contrast.
Is that the one that
the guitar playing of Hans Zimmer with this movie?
Is serious? I'm being serious. Is that the one where he's in space? Or no, that's okay. All right.
Yes.
You guys have until 2:05, and then I'm cutting it off because I'm so tired.
No, I just wanted to throw that out.
I don't catch any heat.
Like, you know, that'd be fun. But I wouldn't have thought about that until I saw this movie. No, the 4 hours it took me to get through the movie because of the internet issues I was having. This was a beautiful, haunting movie with great performances all through. And Dean Stockwell absolutely was the yeoman of the movie, because like, yeah, he wasn't the character that stood out, but he gave the performance to make everybody else look good. But like, you know, he was strong at the beginning when Harry Dean Stanton wasn't speaking at all. And as the movie went on, he did kind of regress. True, but he also like in his scenes, except for maybe that very first opening scene where he just seems so like unsure of himself, and he's telling his wife, "Yeah, I'm going to go do this." Like it really did kind of create like there was more to that character than we necessarily saw on screen, and I think it's very underappreciated what he did in this movie, because everybody else, was it Natasha from Germany?
Yeah, the couch can. Yeah.
Did I get that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Like her performance was phenomenal. Harry Dean Stanton, of course, like always is phenomenal. Even the kid actor. I mean, so many kid actors are terrible, and this kid was pretty
His
good.
name was Hunter. His name was Hunter.
Wow.
Speak his name.
And he played Hunter.
Yeah, no, they kept his Harry Dean
He's
Stanton.
also in
didn't keep the
Invaders
actual
from
name.
Mars.
Okay. Yes.
Let's see, Perfume. He's in a few other things, but nothing I saw.
Yeah, I did look it up. It looks like he kind of retired from acting a few years ago, but
he's
got plenty of work.
He's in a movie about Rip Van Winkle called Rip Van Winkle, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. Here's the description: a lazy man falls asleep for 20 years.
Which, by the way,
okay,
Rip Van Winkle.
I believe you.
Right here, Rip Van Winkle, Hudson Valley. That's where the story of Rip Van Winkle took place. Right. Like I think 20-30 minutes as did Sleepy Hollow.
You're just like down. You're upriver from Sleepy Hollow.
I was gonna say, you're going to Sleepy Hollow right after
I
this,
remember
right?
going to the Sleepy Hollow diner after seeing Pete Seeger play.
I love that Pete Seeger. I have a final
Hunter
thought.
Carson. Yeah, that's kid's name. Hunter.
My final thought is: this is not a place to bring a fancy woman. If you had a fancy woman, would you bring her here? I'll leave you with that question. All right. Thank you all for being on the show. I'm gonna get drunk on a red couch and yell at my kid. I don't have a kid, but
and another stylistic shift over to Scott Pilgrim for Friday, right?
So we gotta announce that. You want to announce that, Conan?
Sure.
Yes.
Scott Pilgrim versus the World coming up on Friday with Mr. Chris Murphy of Sloan appearing on the show, who was the I'm not sure if you actually call the role, but like he taught the people that weren't musicians how to look like they're musicians on that movie. Which I think is and Chris is great. And I actually really like that movie despite having like kind of like side eye for Michael Cera. There's a lot to love there. Stylistically a little bit different than this one. I
always liked Michael Cera because of the movie where he's just on a shitload of coke and smacks Rihanna's ass. That what is it? This is the end, or
this is the end.
Yeah. But no, I just always like in my head, like, because I know that's not who he is, but it just would be really funny if it was. So I'm just like, he's probably like that.
I mean, I love Arrested Development, so I always got a soft spot for.
Yeah, but he's the worst part of Arrested Development.
Well,
all right, I'll end it on this note. There is no.
Don't force me to defend this dude. He's doing okay without me.
There is no in between. You either have to be a rich father or a poor one.
Yeah,
Thank
you're
you
either with us or against us. And the Michael
for joining
Cera
us on Movie Night Extravaganza.